Okay, so tonight we're continuing with the series about tefillah, about prayer. We began a couple of weeks ago to discuss the source of prayer, where it originates, the mitzvah, the commandment, the purpose of prayer, to turn to Hashem. And it is important that I re-emphasize that prayer in itself is not just a set of requests that we have from Hashem to deliver us from our sorrows, from our problems, or to give us a particular blessing that we're very much in need of. It is not only for that. It is in order for us to remember continuously of this important connection that we have with the Almighty, that even after He has created the world, He continues to supervise the world. This idea of ashgacha t'midit, of constant divine providence, is very central to Judaism, because it basically eliminates any idea or any belief in that there is a random or randomization of events, that things occur by coincidence. Very important to remove this idea from our minds. Judaism does not believe in something that happens by chance. Everything is guided from above, and therefore through prayer we basically make this point very, very clear, that He's aware of our deeds, He's aware of our thoughts, He listens to our prayers when we turn to Him. And sometimes He looks away too, when we don't turn to Him. So in essence, the prayer is not just to request something from Him, it is also sometimes a way that Hashem wants from us to turn to Him, and as a result of that, He may actually hold back something in order to bring this about, in order to cause us to turn to Him. So ultimately, Hashem wants us to pray to Him, Hashem wants us to be in touch with Him, and to speak to Him as though we would be speaking to somebody of importance, that we need something of Him, someone that we rely on, someone that we can turn to in our time of need. And obviously this is not just someone. This is the Almighty Hashem, who created the world, who created us, who brought us into this world for a purpose, where we all have a mission. And it is important that in this life, in this short life that we're in, that we stay focused on this. And since human beings tend to be distracted, the rabbis did us a tremendous favor in composing the Siddur and putting this together, this prayer book, where we can actually say what needs to be said, and in this way remind ourselves of our duties in this world on a daily constant basis. What we've done so far is talk a little bit about the history and the development of the prayer and its composition. We also went on to explain the essence of what prayer is and what it does, how it can be more effective depending on how it is expressed. If it is with sincerity, if it's from our heart. After all, it is called a service. This is an avodah. Avodah meaning it's work. It's laborious. It's not just words. It's not just lip service. It's avodah. Avodah shebalev meaning a job, a work that is done with one's heart. In other words, we actually mean what we say. So what we're going to do tonight is talk a little bit about the structure of prayer. The structure of prayer and the order, the various prayers that we have in the Siddur, the various nuschaot meaning the various styles and rites that are found amongst the various communities, Sephardim and Ashkenazim. And this will take us a couple weeks. We will go through most of the Siddur, but not every part of the Siddur. And what I want to achieve is to give us a better understanding of the various parts of the Siddur that many of us take for granted. We say it, we don't even know what we're saying. And even though I did explain that you can speak in any language, and He understands even Chinese, you can pray to Him in any language, and He will listen. Nevertheless, Lashon HaKodesh is the preferred language to pray. Lashon HaKodesh, in other words, the Hebrew language, the biblical Hebrew language, in which the Siddur is composed of, even though in the Siddur you will have parts in Aramaic, like the Kaddish. Nonetheless, that is the preferred language, and whoever can should make an effort to learn the language so that he can understand what he's saying, and in this way he will also be able to express himself a lot better. The better we understand the words, the better we can express ourselves. Just a little bit of background for those who were not here. What I did was put together how the tradition evolved, not just in prayer, but how the tradition evolved concerning the Torah and the Torah Shebal Peh, the Torah Shebichtav, the oral word and the written word. It came down all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu, as you know, went to the prophets, and here we're dealing with a period of mostly the Second Temple era and after the Second Temple era, because during the First Temple era we still have prophets. We have the judges, we have who were before, we have the prophets who were responsible for the transmission of the Torah, for educating the people. So the list that you see over here, Anshe Knesset Agdola, Tanaim, Amoraim, Rabbanan Savorai, Geonim, Rishonim, Achronim, is already much later. We have a group of people called Anshe Knesset Agdola, whose number was about 120 at its peak, of which some were prophets in the very beginning of the Second Temple era, where they coming back from Bavel, from Babylonia. They're rebuilding the Second Temple. And they eventually, this group eventually was known as the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin, who comprised of 71 great scholars who made major decisions for Am Yisrael in Halakha, in other areas. And towards the end of the Second Temple era, or maybe even in the middle, you have even a group that's not on this list called Zugot. Zugot are the pairs. You will find them in Pirkei Avot. These group of people are in charge of teaching Am Yisrael, of giving over the Masoret, the tradition. And as the Second Temple is being built, in the very, very beginning, we're also having the Siddur that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago being composed. Siddur meaning a book of prayers that is organized, a mesudar. It is no longer an expression where one goes to his corner and says words of his own, in his own language, with his own words. It is a book of certain prayers that the rabbis put together for us to enable us to pray and to say certain things in a way which will be applicable to all of us. In other words, everybody will say pretty much the same thing. It will be in Siddur, in Mesudar. So on Anshe Knesset Agdola, as you can see, the first group are the Meyazdim. I call them the founders. They are the ones who put together, even though we did have certain tefillot, certain parts of the Torah being used as prayers in the First Temple era. After all, David wrote Tehillim, right? Tehillim was around before. Many parts of the prayer book consists of Tehillim, beautiful songs of praise and thanks to Hashem. So that is being used, and the whole prayer book is interspersed with Tehillim. So you do have in the First Temple era, you always have certain parts that were used in various situations, in the bringing of a sacrifice, and in other situations. But here we're having the Anshe Knesset Agdola put together something for us that becomes formalized. And then we go on to the Tanaim, who further organized and edited what should be said and how it should be said. We have the Amoraim that followed with halachot. Just for you to have an idea of the history of our people, the Second Temple era lasts 420 years. The period of the Tanaim, which began right before the destruction and after the destruction, lasted for about 200 to 250 years of Tanaim, who were the ones who basically put together in writing the Mishnayot too, which is the oral law. The Amoraim are the ones who are more involved in the Gemara. They are the ones who are saying things. Amoraim saying things of what they heard, putting together the Gemara, putting together the halachot of the Tefillah, giving their opinions as to how things should be said. So further elaborating or further developing this Siddur. And when I say Siddur, by the way, I also mean Haggadah Shel Pesach. Everything that we have today that is in the form of text and rituals is being put together at that time. Then we have a period of Amoraim, we said, was about 400 years. That period of time lasted a long time. Rabbanan Savorai were the very, very end of the Gemara, when the Gemara is already being sealed and nothing else is being added to it. They're the last ones. Perhaps only a couple generations, between 150 to 180 years of Rabbanan Savorai, which is, if you want to know exactly, in about the 7th century. Many of them in Bavel, of course. They are the ones who are in charge of making certain takanot and further polishing the prayer book. Then you have a period of the Geonim, which was also several hundred years. After that, they made the additional changes, and it was in their time that the Siddur actually began to be compiled almost completely the way we have it today. So during the period of the Geonim, which lasted up until in the English year, up until the year about 1050, that is when finally, even though we don't have the printing press yet, we do have manuscripts that date from back then, where you actually see a formal Siddur for the first time, and additional changes are being made after that, but not major. During the period of the Rishonim and the Acharonim, you have what's called, I put here, Osafot Shel Piyutim, additional songs and chants and techinot, petitions of all sorts that were added later in the various communities because of circumstances that arose there. We had great poets, great compositors, how do you pronounce it? Composers who were very, very expressive and were very, very knowledgeable of the language, and put together some beautiful songs that we have that were included in the Siddurim. However, as I've explained in the past, at this point in time we are having many variations as a result of the diaspora, and you're having nuschaot, which I'll talk a little bit about more maybe next week, and actually show you the differences between Temani, Sepharadi, Marocai, Ashkenazi, all of these. These are happening as a result of the Galut. So some changes and some variations in song, in style, and certain additional words and so forth are being added for a variety of reasons, of which some I will discuss with you tonight. Here's a brief list of some of those nuschaot. I wrote it in Hebrew, but I will explain what they are. You have the Nusach HaSfaradim. Whenever it says Sfaradi, it basically means Sephardic. Now, what I mean by Sephardic, that originates from Spain, Portugal. Today, it is also called the Nusach of Edot HaMizrach, of the communities from the East, the Middle East in this case, which basically applies to many Jews of the Orient, including India, Bukhara, Iran, North Africa. Even though you'll be surprised, if you go back enough in history, you will find that the Persians had their own Nusach. The old Nusach Paras was somewhat different than the Siddurim that they use today. Today, all the Sephardim, more or less, except for the Italians, are using pretty much a standard Siddur with some variations. The Syrians have some variations in their Siddur, Aram Sova, Aleppo, and you have some variations in the Moroccan Siddur or in the Moroccan Nusach, but for the most part the Siddur of the Sephardim is pretty much the same. There's a Nusach Italia, which is Italian Nusach, which is quite different. Even though we're talking about Sephardic Jews, we're talking about quite a few changes. In many ways, this Italian one resembles the Ashkenaz. In some ways it does not. It's in between the Sephardic and the Ashkenaz. It's a very old Nusach that is still around for the most part amongst the original Italian Jews, not the ones who came there recently. So this Nusach is still around. Again, for the most part, it's very similar. Most prayer books are similar, but there are changes. Then we have the Nusach Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz is called because it comes from Germany. Now, when I say Nusach Ashkenaz, I'm being very specific, because if you look at a Siddur and you want to know what Nusach it is and you see Nusach Ashkenaz, it does not mean that all Ashkenazim pray using that Nusach. Okay, the Nusach Ashkenaz is very specific to certain communities of Germany, Lithuania, some parts of Russia, and perhaps some parts of Czechoslovakia and Hungary that use this particular nusach. Not all Ashkenazim use this. Why? Because they use something called nusach Sepharad. And that confuses everybody. Sepharad, that reminds me of Sepharadi, right? What's the difference between nusach Sepharad and nusach Sfaradim? They both mean Spain. One is Hasidish? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but we have to... Yeah, right. Obviously, nusach Sfarad is not nusach Sepharadi. It's a somewhat different nusach, but it's very similar to the Sepharadi. In other words, the reason why it was called Sepharad is because it resembles in certain ways the Sepharadi. In the order of certain prayers and in the choice of words. Why? So let's go up one to the Nusach Ari. Who was the Ari? A great Kabbalist. And when he arrived at the scene, he introduced certain changes and additions that include Kabbalah. Right. And the Lubavitchers use that Nusach. So that Nusach, or that version, is based on Kabbalah. That's basic. Well, obviously, we don't have all the full Kabbalah text. But Nusach Ari is based on that, based on certain Yehudim, certain Kavanot, in other words, certain concepts and certain ideas that are being expressed in certain words. Remember, the words here are important, and in the order of the way the prayer appears. And when he came to the scene, of course, he introduced these ideas, and whoever wanted to follow the Kabbalah in their prayer adopted this prayer, this Nusach, this version. Nusach Sfarad came about only recently because of Hasidut, from the time of the Baal Shem Tov. That is where you have the Hasidim adopting some of the Kabbalah and integrating it into the Nusach Ashkenaz. So you're having the Ashkenaz that they are themselves being modified in some ways, in the choice of words and in the order of certain things to accommodate certain Kabbalistic concepts. So therefore, Nusach Sfarad has nothing to do with Sfaradi, but it is in some ways close to the Sepharadi, because when you compare the two, it does resemble, as a result of the changes, the Nusachs of the Sephardim. Yeah, including Chabad too. So that you will find the Nusach Ari, the Nusach Sfarad, having elements of the Sepharadi, nevertheless maintaining the basic text of the Ashkenaz, old Nusach. Yes.
Let me ask you a personal question.
Sure.
I know your father's Hasidic.
Right.
So do you daven this Sfarad, do you daven this Sfaradi? Since the shul daven Sfaradi.
Okay, that's a very good question. What do I pray? So I have to give you an introduction to that question. It's an important introduction. It is important to preserve your custom. It is important, lo leshanot mimatbea shetavu chachamim. The rabbis tell us, be careful not to change the words that the chachamim set up for you. They knew beruach hakodesh, with their divine inspiration, they knew exactly what words to use. So you don't want to change it. Even though there are parts of the tefillah where you're allowed to add and say anything you want. But don't change that which is already there, because they said it so for a reason. And every nusach is acceptable, and every nusach is special, and every nusach has, according to the Kabbalah, has a route or a path that it goes through to reach heaven. Its own path. So they're all special, they're all important, they're all good. Now, the rabbis tell us, even though they're all special, they're all good, you don't want to change from your father's tradition. You want to follow the same customs of your parents. So a Sephardi should remain a Sephardi, and Ashkenaz should remain an Ashkenaz, right? However, the halakha says very clearly, whenever the change does not produce an avera, איפה שאין נדנות של עבירה, אין אל תיטוש תורת אמך. The pasuk of Al Titosh Torah Imecha means do not forsake the Torah of your mother. In other words, your tradition. So you don't want to change. But if, as a result of the change, it does not produce a sin, in other words, it's not like an Ashkenaz all of a sudden is going to eat rice on Pesach, right? Ashkenazim don't eat rice on Pesach. If he were to do so, he's basically going against a very important tradition, and that is a nidnut shel avira. It is somewhat of a transgression. But when it comes to pronunciation, as I've said in the past, if you know a better way to pronounce a certain word or a letter, you don't have to corrupt your pronunciation just because all Americans don't know how to pronounce the R, and they say R, right? If you know how to say the right reish, then you say it correctly. The problem is that the diaspora produced all of these changes that are not correct. So if somehow you do know the correct way to pronounce, you're allowed to. And not only you're allowed to, you should adopt the preferred way of the correct pronunciation. The problem is, nobody can say with certainty on every single vowel and consonant of Hebrew what's the correct way, even though we know that the Yemenites have preserved a more correct or accurate form of pronunciation. So that concerning the pronunciation, if you knew the better or more correct way to pronounce, you would be allowed to change or adapt that pronunciation. However, when it comes to the nusach hatfilah, it is important that you preserve your own, because that is your custom, that is your tradition, that is special, and you don't want to in any way look down at that, because it is not a pronunciation. This is correct for some reason. Now, however, there is a discussion amongst the poskim, the rabbis. What do you do if you're in another shul? You don't want to be different either. You know the saying in English, when in Rome, be Roman? Something like that, right? Now, it doesn't mean you're going to change your tradition just because you're in Rome, but there are certain halachot that apply to Bet HaKnesset. There's a great importance in not making machloket, not making any divisions, not appearing to have two groups of people. Give you a quick example, even though it's not part of the lecture. Chol HaMoed. You have some Jews that do put on tefillin without a blessing. A small group that does it even with a blessing. But the majority of Jews in Am Yisrael does not put on tefillin on Chol HaMoed, right between the holidays of Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret, and on Pesach there's Chol HaMoed. During those days it's a semi-holiday. No tefillin is put on, except for certain communities who have the custom, who follow the tradition, the opinion that they do put on tefillin. So you don't want to have those two in the same shul, in the same room. It doesn't look right. Those who put on tefillin either put it on at home, then come and join us in prayer. So their prayer should be betzibur. Obviously you don't want to pray by yourself at home. Or they put it in the side room. They pray behind some partition. So it should not appear that there is a division, that there's two opinions. You know, we say like this and you say like that. So therefore, there is an opinion that holds that if you pray in a particular place, you pray like that place. That's the nusach of that place. Especially if you're the chazan, you don't have the right to pray your own nusach. You have to follow the nusach of the place, especially if you're chazan. The question, however, is what happens with those prayers that I say quietly, like the Amidah? Do I have to use the nusach of the place too? On that, there's an opinion that you don't. You say your own nusach. And the only time you say the nusach of the place is when it comes to saying things that are going to be heard out loud. However, if you're going to be in a particular place for many years to come, in a yeshiva for several years, you have moved to a certain community and you have integrated into that shul, and this is not a one-time you came in to pray mincha, but you're going to be a part of that minyan for many, many years to come, you can definitely pray in that nusach, even when you're praying for yourself, even when you're praying quietly. You have adapted the nusach because you've become part of that place. So I know there's different opinions about this, but that's what I do. Exactly. When I'm at home by myself, I pray my nusach. When I'm here, I pray the nusach of the place. So when people ask me, what are you? I tell them, my body is Ashkenaz, my neshama is Sepharadi, and my heart is Temani. And you say, how do you get that? Well, the heart is the prayer. The pronunciation is Temani. I've always used the Temani pronunciation ever since I was bar mitzvah, because I figured out that that was the more correct one. Nusach Sepharad. Our nusach at home is nusach Sfarad because we're Hasidic.
And in Shara Tefillah, he davens Ashkenaz or he davens Torah?
So those things that are out loud, like the Kedusha, he says Nekadesh. He says like the Ashkenaz. But to himself, when he says the Shmon Esrei, I'm almost sure, that he says nusach Sfarad. Because
He davens for the Yomid, he davens
nusach Ashkenaz, right.
and by himself, he davens
Nusach Sfarad.
have to have a good memory.
Yeah, but by this time, after many, many years, you almost know it by heart. Right? You're going to say Avrachamon Shema Kolenu. You're not going to say Shema Kolenu without Avrachamon. If you're Nusach Sfarad. You're just going to say it, the way you're used to saying it. So getting used to something is very helpful. But anyway, there are various Nuschaot. They're all special. They're all good. They're all important. Then we have, anybody here Temani? Temani. They're not here tonight. No Temanim tonight? Too bad. What's that? Temani. Temani is Yemen. In Teman you have for the most part, two basic types of tradition. You have what's called the Baladi and you have the Shami. The word Baladi in Arab means my place, our place. Baladna, Baladi, Balad. It's our place, our country. Hamakom Shelanu. That is the original nusach of the place. And then you have Shami. Balad al-Shams, as it's called in Arabic, was known as a region that included Syria, Lebanon, parts of Jordan, and Israel. There was a time in Yemenite history, Jewish history, where the Sephardic influence penetrated or infiltrated Yemen. And Siddurim were brought, and as a result of that, many of them, not all of them, adapted this nusach as a result of the Sephardic influence. But the original was Baladi. So the question is, how did they ever get the original nusach? They're there from a very, very long time. So if you look at their tradition, if you look at their Siddur, they have a book called Tiklal. And in that book, you have the halachot, and you have the how to pray, and the prayer book. You will see that it pretty much resembles what the Rambam says, how you should pray. Words and order and everything. So they basically ask, well, who came first? They or the Rambam? Did the Rambam adapt his prayer book from them? That's what they say. So he adapted it from us. We were here first. But the historians disagree. The historians seem to say that the Temanim, at least the ones who follow the Rambam, they adopted him as their rabbi, and they followed him, and therefore a lot of their tefillah has been formulated based on what the Rambam wrote. So they are the only ones, actually, the only community who actually use the Rambam as a guide, as their Shulchan Aruch. We have our own Shulchan Aruch of Rabbi Yosef Karo, which together with the Ramah is followed by the majority of Jews in the world, the Shulchan Aruch, and the Temanim follow the Rambam. And there are some differences. Nothing major, but nevertheless some differences. The what? Right. Yeah. Anyway, I just want to remind you, those of you who are interested in knowing a little bit more about the Temanim, there was a big commotion years ago when the Kabbalah was introduced, the Zohar was introduced, and that caused a rift amongst various communities in Teman who didn't want to have anything to do with the Kabbalah, with the Zohar, and they wanted to follow strictly the Rambam, the logic, the philosophy of the Rambam, without any interference of Kabbalah. So that's another reason why it caused a little bit of a rift or differences between certain Temanim. All right, let's begin with the actual prayer book, the Seder HaBoker. Seder HaBoker means there are certain parts of the prayer book that we say at home. We don't say in the shul. The first thing is the Modeh Ani Lefanecha. Modeh Ani Lefanecha that we say as we're getting up from bed. Very important few words that we give thanks to Hashem for restoring to us our soul. Sleep, rabbis tell us, is a chad mishishi mimita. It's 1/60th of death. And we appreciate it that we're waking up, that we're able to serve Him again, right? And this is an important few words that we say at the very, very beginning of our day. We don't take life for granted. We realize that Hashem has given us life. He has restored us this life. And that is what the words Modeh ani lefanecha melachai v'kayim shechezarta bi nishmati b'chamla rabba emunatecha. I'm not going to translate every single word right now, but the idea behind this prayer is to give thanks to Hashem. So immediately, as soon as we wake up, even before we wash our hands, before we go to shul, for the men, of course, we put on our kippah, our head cover, to be able to say those words. After we get up, we wash our hands. Now, what's netilat yadayim for washing our hands? So various explanations are given. One of them has to do with the fact that during the night, our hands may have touched certain parts of our body that are unclean. And here we're about to go to pray, we have to be clean, so we have to wash our hands. Another idea behind netilat yadayim is because during the nights when one is asleep, especially when one is asleep, but even if he did not go to sleep and he was awake, the night in itself, or together with the sleep, produces a certain level of impurity, a certain level of tumah on the hands. Now, on what part of the hands? Especially at the edges. Tumah usually comes on the edges. That is why it's important to cut your nails after they have grown beyond the edge of the flesh. You don't want it to grow too much, because otherwise the tum'ah is always there. It sits usually at the edges. And that is why Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, for example, when we don't wash completely, we wash only till our knuckles. The bare minimum, because that is where the tum'ah is, at the edges. So for this reason alone, it is important to wash our hands. And how do you remove the tumah? B'sirugin, the halakha says alternating. Right, left, right, left, right, left, 3 times. That is the way to remove the tumah. You don't want to touch food. You don't want to touch your eyes. You don't want to touch your ears. You don't want to touch basically anything else until you wash your hands. The closer the water is to your bed, the better it is, so you don't have to walk for too long with your hands unclean. And that is why you will find some people having the water next to their bed where they can wash. But if it's a few feet away, it's okay too, so long as you don't have to go too far. You wake up in the middle of the night to have a drink, you need to wash your hands. You do it quickly, right? Then you have, after that, if you go to the restroom, you have the bracha of Asher Yatzar, which is a very, very important bracha, a very important blessing of giving thanks to Hashem for the incredible body that we have, for preserving its health, that if, God forbid, something would stop working, the kidneys, the heart, the liver, we wouldn't be able to remain alive. So in saying the bracha of Asher Yatzar, we're actually reminding ourselves how lucky we are, that we're healthy, that we're thankful for this. We're asking Hashem to continue to preserve our health. It is actually a segula, that whoever says this bracha, Asher Yatzar b'chavana, in other words, he's focused and says it word for word, he will always be healthy. So it's a good segula for beriut, for health, to say Asher Yatzar every time you come out of the bathroom. If you went to the bathroom, b'chavana, in other words, with the proper focus and concentration. I'm not going to go again through the translation of every single word. If you have an English translation, you will be, of course, very, very impressed as to how incredible the human body is, how Hashem has created the body, how every organ has a purpose, how everything needs to be working, including the tonsils. They used to remove tonsils because they thought that there's no purpose for it. Today, they don't remove your tonsils. They realize that even something like the tonsils has a purpose. After Birkat HaShachar, we have Elokei Neshama, where we're giving thanks to Hashem. This is already said for the most part already in the shul, where we give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for preserving our life, that so long as the Neshama is Bekirbi, I will pray and thank you, the Master of all the deeds of all of creation, that restores Neshamot Efegarim Metin, that restores the soul to those who were almost dead. As I said earlier, during the time we were asleep, we were almost dead. So that is somewhat how we complete some of the blessings in the morning. Some of these blessings are said at home, and some of them are said in shul. Right, that's very true. Yeah, that's another point. There's a lot of ideas here, but we simply don't have the time to go through every single phrase. But that's a good point that this particular prayer, Elokai Neshama, also includes a prayer for the future. That after we leave this world, there will be Tchiyat HaMetim. In other words, the Neshama that has left us, when it does, will be restored to us when Mashiach comes and when the dead rise. So that's also true. That's another idea that's being expressed in the prayer, which, as I said many, many times, is to infuse in us a very, very strong emunah, a faith in God, not only as the creator of the world, but as the one who has given us the neshama, preserves our neshama, will restore the neshama, and so forth. So all the words that are being said are for us, for our own benefit. It's not only a request, it's to remind us of what life is all about. We have a part of the prayer book in the morning that are called Birkat Torah. There's a very great emphasis put on the learning of the Torah. As the rabbis tell us, the world stands on three things: Ala Torah, Ala Avodah, V'Gemilut Chasadim. A Jew cannot be without the Torah. Just like you need food for the physical body, you need Torah for the neshama. So la'asok b'divrei Torah. By the way, I will be saying certain things here according to the Ashkenaz nusach. Sometimes maybe the Sephardic nusach. There are some variations in the word, like in the first beracha that I put out over here. La'asok b'divrei Torah. There's some variations in the order of when they are said, and even in the words themselves. But basically, that beracha has to do with occupying yourself with Torah. Now, what does occupying mean? Don't treat the Torah as a hobby. Don't treat the Torah as something that you learn once in a while. It should be like your esek, like your occupation, that you devote to it your time and your effort. And these berachot are being said before we learn something. In other words, before we begin to learn, we will say these berachot. The second beracha being ve'arev na, that the words of the Torah should be sweet, right?
Also part of actual Torah Pesukei. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what?
Between la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Right.
Shabbat
Sure.
This is actually Torah word.
Yeah, but I will give a better example of what portions of the Torah we actually say after and immediately after we said these blessings. So ve'arevna is that the words of the Torah should be sweet, that we should be able to continue to learn and to have an interest in learning the Torah. And the third blessing is Asher B'charbanu, where we give thanks to Hashem for having chosen us in giving to us the Torah that we are proud of. The difference between this and the other beracha is quite a bit. Here we're saying that we're proud of this. We want to hold on to this. We're thankful. We're not just recognizing the importance of it and the mitzvah of learning Torah, but we're actually saying that we are happy, we are proud that we were chosen from all the nations of the world to receive this Torah. All of these are called Birkat Torah. Now, as soon as we finish the blessings of the Torah, we have portions of the Torah that we learn, and we say immediately. Even though we will be learning perhaps after we finish the entire prayer, these are portions that are immediately said subsequent to the blessings we just made. We have the learning of the Mikra, learning of Chumash. The example of it is Birkat Kohanim. Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. That is being said then too. These are verses from the Torah alone. Then you have Limud Mishnah, mitzvot she'en laim shi'ur. There are certain mitzvot, in the Mishnah Masechet Pe'ah, there are certain mitzvot that the Torah does not tell us how much, what is the amount to give. Like Pe'ah. Pe'ah is the edge of a field that you leave over to the poor. You're harvesting the entire crop, leave the edge. Doesn't say how much. The Chachamim gave us shi'urim. How much to give for terumah, how much to give for pe'ah, and so forth. So here we have an example, a sample, I should say, of a Mishnah, of a learning of a Mishnah. Then we have a sample of a Talmud, Masechet Shabbat, of certain mitzvot that you even will derive some benefit of them in Olam Hazeh. As you know, for the most part, the benefit for the performance of a mitzvah is in Olam Haba, not in Olam Hazeh. But you will have the benefit of certain mitzvot even in Olam Hazeh. And what are they? One of them is always going to be Torah. The Torah applies in both in Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba, of course, the benefit is derived. We have Achnasat Orchim, Bikur Cholim, what? Kibud Avaim, honoring one's parents, a whole list of certain mitzvot that have a special power, and as a result of fulfilling them, one gets credit for them even in this world. In other words, he will enjoy and benefit from them somehow in this world. Long life, success. He doesn't have to wait for the world to come. In other words, he eats from the fruit in this world, and the principle will remain for the world to come. These are samples of Mikra, Mishnah, and Gemara, all part of the Torah. Okay, let's go quickly to Birkat HaShachar. You have 15 blessings in Birkat HaShachar. Now, Birkat HaShachar are the main blessings of the morning. During the time of the Gemara, these blessings were actually said at the time they were happening. Today, we say it in the shul. Or you can say it at home too, before you come to the shul. I'm going to go briefly through them. It all depends, yeah. I mean, yeah. You can't say it either way. Yeah, you can say it either way. Now, there's a little bit of a difference between the Sephardi and Ashkenazi order of these blessings, but they're pretty much the same blessings. Okay, blessing number 1 is Anoten la'sechvi bina la'avchin ben yom ve'layla, which literally means that Hashem gives intelligence or understanding to the rooster to distinguish between day and night. The rooster is an alarm clock. That's what farmers use to get up in the morning, right? But why do we say la'sechvi? What's the importance of saying that Hashem gives bina to the sechvi, understand to the sechvi? Because sechvi also means our heart and our mind. It does not only mean rooster. The rabbis use the word rooster because just like the rooster is able to distinguish between day and night, light and darkness, so does the human mind and the heart. It has the potential to know the difference between good and bad. In other words, we have it embedded in our subconscious mind. Nobody can say, I didn't know. There are certain things you can know on your own. You've been given enough intelligence, enough binah, to be able to distinguish between that which is right and that which is wrong, between light and darkness. So, we give thanks to Hashem for giving us that ability. Shelo asani goy, we give Hashem thanks that we were not born to Gentiles. There are certain berachoti that some people may take offense. We're not looking down on anybody here. We're just saying that we're proud and happy that Hashem made us who we are, because in this way we have the opportunity to serve Him and to fulfill His mitzvot. Same thing with Shelo asani eved and Shelo asani isha. Shelo asani eved meaning that He did not make me a slave. Where a slave has to have somebody else as a master, I have you as my master. A slave is exempt from mitzvot. Right? Same thing with Shelo asani isha, that He did not make me a woman. The women don't like this blessing. Right? But we're not looking down. We're not minimizing anybody. We're just saying that we're happy that we are men who have many responsibilities and obligations that women don't have. So therefore, we recognize this. Some people are not happy. They actually go ahead and change from a man to a woman. Right? Have you heard about that? There's some women who want to become men, and they go to the doctor and ask for a surgery. Be happy the way you were made. Hashem made you for a reason. You are a man, you're a woman, you have a certain job. Be happy of what you are. And that's what we're saying. We're happy for being men, for having the obligations we have as men. The woman says, Sha'asani kirtzono, I put it in parentheses, she's happy for what she is. Hashem made her for what she is. She should be proud of that too. Pokeach ivrim, we were asleep, we couldn't see. We were like blind. We give thanks to Hashem for opening up our eyes. But this is not just intended for those of us who could see. This is also intended for those people who are blind, who are able to see through the eyes of others. Even they can be they are benefited from people who can see. Even the blind. So Pokeach Ivrim applies to both. Rabbis tell us we actually are all blind until Hashem opens up our eyes. What does that mean? Sometimes you're looking all over your house for something that you lost. You can't figure, you don't know where it is. You don't know where it is. How could it be that you misplaced it? Sometimes min hashamayim, they make us blind, in a way blind, so we do not know where that object is for some reason, and then eventually we find it. So there's a segula in the Gemara, anybody who lost anything that has not been stolen and that has not been gone and disappeared into fire or the sea, it is to be found. Just say, Elaka de Rabbi Meir Aneni 3 times. Make a commitment that you will give some money for the tzedakah in memory of Rabbi Meir Balanes, and don't give $2-3. Give a nice, reasonable, good amount, right? 18, 50, 100, whatever it is, depending what you lost, right? And after you say that, you start checking your whole house, and I assure you and guarantee it that within a reasonable amount of time, you will find it. Whether it's the keys to the car, whether it's your wallet, whether it's your passport that you have to have right away, Hashem will open up your eyes after you make that commitment.
Commitment to give stuff to the cat for a variableness with other things too, not just
Right.
to do something.
Right.
Sure.
Sure. Right. Yeah, it's a big schut to give tzedakah for Rabbi Meir, even for other things. That's right. Yeah. So this is pretty much the idea over here. The Pokeach Ivrim, Hashem sometimes enlightens us where before we were not. We did not know. And all of a sudden, we do know where something is. Yes?
I have a question about when you say enlighten it to open up your eyes.
Yeah?
What I'm confused about is you said that Adam and Eve ate from the apple.
Right.
It says that after they ate from the apple, the eyes were open. So, but the eyes were open actually means that we come to this world where we're limited in our look.
Right.
Because then if you
The Adam and Chava,
come open again, so we still want our eyes to be open, or we don't have to be open?
yeah, Adam and Chava were in a purer state before they sinned. Right. And this was not such a big advantage. Even though their eyes opened up in realizing something, they would have been better off not knowing certain things. See what I mean? There's sometimes it's better not to know. And what they were able to observe gave them the ability to sin. As it became easier for them. And it becomes more difficult for them now to struggle to make decisions. Okay, then what should I do now? Where before that it was more natural, they knew right from wrong. Now it becomes a struggle. They have a mind that has to make decisions. They have to decide. Where before it was much easier for them to know right from wrong. So even though in one way it looks like a blessing, all of a sudden they know, in many ways it's not a blessing. Actually, it was like eating a fruit before its time. They should have waited. The Zohar says before Mashiach comes, all this great knowledge that Hashem wants to give us, that He has been wanting to give us, will start coming down into this world. And a lot will be revealed to the world what was not known before. And when Mashiach comes, even more so. Kamaim layam mechasim, the knowledge of Hashem will be so great, and we will know it with so much clarity that it will be something completely different than what we know today. But that has a certain time. We cannot have it before its time. Okay, let's just quickly go through the rest of the blessings. Then we have Malbish Harumim. We give thanks to Hashem for clothing us, clothing the naked. In other words, that He has given us the means to support ourselves, to clothe us. Matir Asurim, that He releases those who are bound, those who are in prison. When you're asleep, you're pretty much in a prison. So these are blessings that we repeat on a daily basis to remind ourselves that it all comes from Hashem. It doesn't happen, those things don't happen by themselves. So kef kefufim, that is able to make us erect. Baruch Hashem, we're able to walk on our 2 feet. We're not bent over, chas v'shalom. We're healthy. Roka aretz alamayim, that he puts land over the waters. We're able to walk on land. Most of the globe is water. 70% pretty much is water. So Hashem has put earth on which we can walk on with our 2 feet. Sha'asali kol tzorki, that has given me all my necessities. Now what does that mean, kol tzorki? Whatever we have is what we need. A person may say, but I don't have this and I don't have that. If you don't have that means Hashem did not want you to have it. Shasali kol tzorki, be happy, be thankful for what you have, because that is what Hashem wants you to have. Ozer Yisrael b'gvura, He strengthens us, or He girds us with strength. This means two things. Remember, in the time of the Gemara, these blessings were said stage by stage. So when a person got up, he said, Zokef kefufim. He put his feet on the ground, he said, Roka aretz alamayim. Right? Ozer Yisrael b'gvura was said when he put on his belt. Ozer, to gird. Why would they put on the belt? Because that was to separate the lower part of the body from the upper part of the body. This has to do with modesty. So look how Am Yisrael is so modest in their dress code. Ozer Yisrael b'gvura, with strength. But this also has to do with Am Yisrael, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always there for us to give us strength so we can defeat our enemies. Oter Yisrael b'tifara is a beautiful blessing. Most people don't even know what they're saying when they say this blessing. Oter Yisrael b'tifara means He crowns us with beauty. This blessing has at least partially to do with the head covering, whether it's for a woman or for a man being the kippah, that this basically shows that we have fear of God. We acknowledge His presence by covering our head. Oter Yisrael b'tifara, even in our heads, we have a crown that demonstrates our belief in Him. Jew is not allowed to walk several steps without his head covering. He's not allowed to make a blessing, of course, without a head covering. Hanoten layaef koach. He gives that he who is tired strength. After we have slept several hours, we feel healthy again. We feel that we have our strength back, our strength restored. And finally, Amavir Cheblei Shena, He has removed the sleep from our eyes. In other words, Baruch Hashem, we're able to continue to work, to continue to do things after we've had a night of sleep. The last blessing, which is really a separate blessing, is a request, shetargilenu b'toratecha, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should accustom us, that we should be able to continue to involve ourselves and immerse ourselves in the fulfillment of Torah and mitzvot, that He should not bring us through to any tests and any difficult challenge that we may have a hard time to contend with. And we finish with Agomer Chasadim Tovim, that He's kind to us. Now, what does this have to do with anything? There have been various individuals who've asked to be tested or did not ask for the testing, and they were not able to deal with the test. I'm not going to go through all the examples, but there are various examples of individuals in our Torah who, when given a test, were not able to go through it. Were not able to. Abraham Avinu, Baruch Hashem, did well, but not everybody did well with the test. So we asked Hashem, please do not put us through challenging situations where we may not be able to deal with it properly. Another request, another very special request, that we should be able to do the right thing in His eyes all the time. There are many challenges, many temptations in life that lead us to sin, including bad friends, Yetzer Hara, all kinds of situations. If you look through this whole request, it's a beautiful request that we're asking Hashem to always be attached to the Torah mitzvot and not to fall in any trap of the Yetzer Hara. After the Birkat HaShachar, the prayer goes on to the Korbanot. As I've explained in the past, Korbanot are the sacrifices, which was a great part of the service that Am Yisrael had during the time we had a temple. Today we don't have the Korbanot, so we have more prayers instead of the Korbanot. But in order to remember the service of the sacrifices, those of us who have the time to pray the entire Tfilat Shachrit will also say Korbanot. Those who do not can skip this, but it's important to say it nevertheless. Korbanot has certain parts to it. Before the Korbanot, you have something called Parshat HaAkedah, where we remember the merit of Yitzchak, who went on the Mizbeach as a sacrifice, even though he, of course, was not killed. But this is a sechut for Am Yisrael. Whenever we say Parshat HaAkedah, Hashem remembers the merit of Yitzchak. Rosh Hashanah, we say it, yes. We have Birkat HaMekadesh Shmo Barabim, which is also a very special blessing for those Jews who have sanctified Hashem's name by giving up their life. We have the Parashat HaKorbanot. Now, once we begin with the actual Parashat HaKorbanot, it goes through the whole order of how things were done in the Bet HaMikdash. including beginning with Kiyor, Netilat Yadayim V'Raglayim, where the Kohanim used to wash their hands and feet before they went to do the job. You have the Trumat Adeshin, removing the ashes from the sacrifices that were consumed from the day before. You have the Korban Tamid that was brought in the morning and in the evening. You have the Parashat Aktoret, which was an incredible job, a difficult job, where very few people knew how to put together certain spices and produce this Ktoret. It had, one of the difficulties was because you have to have the Ashan, the smoke, rising like a straight pillar, not smoke being dispersed. So there was one ingredient called Ma'aleh Ashan that you had to know the exact amounts and how to grind it and how to put it together. And only one, for the most part, one family knew how to make the Ktoret. They were the experts, right? Anyway, we're not allowed to make the Ktoret today in the exact same recipe that they use in the Bet HaMikdash. We have the Seder HaMaracha, the order of how things were placed on the Mizbeach. We have the Mishnat HaZevachim, which goes through all the names of the various Korbanot that were brought. Then we have the Braita of Rabbi Ishmael that discusses the various Midot of the Torah, Gzera Shava, and so forth. How do you arrive at certain decisions by comparing various Pesukim in the Torah? That's called Braita of Rabbi Ishmael. And then finally, after you're done with the Korbanot, you have a prayer of Lebinyan Bet HaMikdash. We miss it. This is what we had, and this is what we want to have. So we ask Hashem to restore the Bet HaMikdash. So you see, if we wouldn't have all these prayers, we wouldn't even think of it. We wouldn't even ask for it. So the Chachamim made us say these words that we should keep in mind. This is what we used to have. This is what we don't have today. Let us hope and pray that we will have it soon. All right, we go to Pesukei de Zimra. In Pesukei de Zimra begins with Hodu. Now this is Nusach Sepharad. Nusach Sepharad begins with Hodu. Nusach Ashkenaz begins with Baruch She'amar, and then they say Hodu. That's the only basic difference. Now Baruch She'amar is a very important prayer. But before I get to Baruch She'amar, let me just say quickly, Hodu does consist of various portions of Tehillim. There's different opinions as to when this prayer was composed, Hodu. Some communities didn't even say Hodu, or at least not at all times. It's giving thanks to Hashem, prayers that were said either at the time that certain sacrifices were brought. Some say David HaMelech said at least portions of it before the Bet HaMikdash was built. Either way, it's a prayer, an important prayer, and giving thanks to Hashem for everything that He has done and continues to do. Baruch She'amar, however, is very interesting. Baruch She'amar consists of 87 words. I'm sorry, is it 87 words or is it? Let me see 1 second. Yeah. I think basically it's 87. 87 words that came about as a result of a petek shenafal me'ashamayim. A petek, a piece of paper, came down from heaven during the time I think it was the Second Temple era or right afterwards. And the Chachamim saw in this piece of paper this prayer, Baruch She'amar. Very powerful prayer that talks about how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is involved in the creation of the world. And it talks not only about the creation, but it talks about reward and punishment. And many of the principles of Judaism are in this prayer. Meshalem Sachar Tov L'Re'av, He rewards those who fear Him. Menachem Al Habriot, He has compassion over those who He created. Oseh Bereshit, basically He created the world. We give thanks to Him and we praise Him with all forms of praise and songs. And we proclaim Him as the King. Very important prayer that is said every morning. Then we have Ashrei Yeshvevetecha, which is another interesting prayer. If you look at Ashrei Yeshvevetecha, it begins, every verse of the Ashrei Yeshvevetecha begins with the Aleph Bet. Except one letter is missing. That's the Nun. But the Aleph Bet begins with Aromimcha, not the first Pesukim of Ashrei Yeshvevetecha. From Aromimcha, then you go on to Bechol Yom Avarecheka, Gadol Hashem Meulan Meod. Every letter of the alphabet except for the nun. One of the explanations given for the nun is because there's a pasuk with a nun that talks about Chalila Bechas, something not too good about the Jewish people. So in order not to include that, the nun does not appear there. But the rest of the alphabet is there. Poteach et yadecha u'mazbi'a lechol charatzon is a very special verse that talks about the parnasah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides for us, our livelihood, and whoever has the proper kavanah on that pasuk, it's a segula for parnasah, that he should never be lacking. So you want to have a special kavanah on that verse, the one that begins with the pei, poteach et yadecha, that he opens your hands, and that he gives you what you need. He gives everybody what they need. Then we have the Hallelujahs, the various portions of Tehillim, where we praise Hashem. These are all praises that are found in Tehillim. And then we have the Vayevarech and the Shirat Hayam. All of this is called, as I put on the title, Pesukei de Zimra, various Pesukim of song. Vayevarech being a portion that David HaMelech said, in giving thanks to Hashem after everything was done. The Bet HaMikdash, even though the Bet HaMikdash was built after him, it's giving thanks to Hashem for everything that has been done so far. From the very beginning of creation until now. And then we go on to Shirat Hayam, which is a song when Am Yisrael was led out of Egypt. The reason why we're going into that is because David HaMelech begins with Vayevarech, which is the whole beginning of creation until Yitziat Yisrael Mitzrayim. So he takes us a little bit through the history of the Jewish people from the very beginning of the creation until, of course, the exodus of Egypt. So we have a little bit of history in that portion of Pesukei de Zimra. And finally, at least for today, we'll continue next week, but for today we have the last portion before the Amidah called the Brachot of Kriat Shema, which consists of 3 brachot, 2 before and 1 after. We have Yotzer Or and Ahavat Olam. Yotzer Or dealing with the creation of the world, from the very, very beginning. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu is responsible for that. And after that we go on to Ahavat Olam, or another Nusach reads it Ahavat Rabbah, which is the love that Hashem has for the Jewish people. These are all blessings that we say before the Shema Yisrael, where we show our love for Hashem and acceptance of the yoke of heaven. So before we go into the Kriat Shema, which is a very, very important part of the prayer, an extremely important part of the prayer, especially the very first pasuk, we mention these 2 berachot, the Yotzer Or and Ahavat Olam, that leads us to that. Ahavat Olam reminding us of how Hashem loves us, how much Hashem cares for us. And then the last baracha, Birkat HaGeulah, is right before the Amidah, where we connect the Shema, what we just finished saying, with the Amidah, with a baracha called Birkat HaGeulah, Ga'al Yisrael, which is talking about the redemption of Mitzrayim, and B'ezrat Hashem also the future redemption. This is an important baracha where one is not allowed to talk in between, as he's saying the baracha and as he's beginning the Amidah, but as soon as he finishes Ga'al Yisrael, he begins the Amidah, that there should be no interruption. The important idea that is mentioned at this point of the Siddur to remind us of the Geulah itself, of the ultimate redemption. Geulah is something that we will discuss a little bit more about next week when we talk about the Amidah itself, the Shmon Esrei, that we say. There are certain parts of the prayer that you never want to miss, that you want to have a special kavanah, and one of them is the Kriat Shema, and the other one is the Shmon Esrei. All the tefillah is important. I don't want you to minimize any part of it, but it's more important to keep in mind that kavanah is what's going to make a difference. What does kavanah mean? I just want to finish with this mashal of the Chafetz Chaim as to how important kavanah is and how to best utilize it. There was somebody that once came to complain to him, Rabbi, I can't have kavanah. Every time I pray, I have ideas of my business. I have things that bother me. I can't focus. I can't concentrate. And by the way, talking about focus and concentration, does anybody know what to do about that? When you pray Amidah, there's two ways to pray Amidah. One is with your eyes closed, and one is by looking at the book, at the Siddur, word for word. Which one is better? Whatever works for you. That's the answer. The answer is whatever works for you. For some people, if they close their eyes and they know their prayer by heart, they can concentrate better. Why can they concentrate better? Because they won't see who's coming in and out from the room. That's one. Plus, they're able to focus better with their eyes closed and they know the prayer by heart. For some people, it's better to look word for word at their prayer book. They just have to be careful not to be distracted. So whatever works best for you to help you with the kavanah. But anyway, the Chafetz Chaim heard this complaint that this man was just not being able, did not succeed in having kavanah, and he told him like this: listen, there was once a young man who was selling bagels. Selling bagels, he had a bagel stand, and one day the Russian army came and they were starving, and they ran over to his booth and they started taking all the bagels from the stand where he had the bagels. So that day he came home without bagels and without money. Sits down for dinner and he asks his wife, so what's for dinner? And she starts yelling at him. You should have taken some of those bagels and you would have had something to eat. Says, when you see that the soldiers are coming to grab your bagels, you should have grabbed some yourself and ran away. At least you would have had some bagels to eat for dinner. So the Chafetz Chaim says, it is not so easy to defeat the Yetzer Hara, to be able to focus on every single word of our prayer. Grab a few bagels. In other words, grab at least one tefillah. Grab one where you can concentrate on that tefillah, on that one, and you'll at least have one. Tafasta merubelo tafasta. You want to grab all the tefillot. You want to have kavanah every single word. That's a very, very big job. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. It's possible once you get used to it, once you prepare yourself properly, once you take the tefillah seriously, it is possible. But you know what? Start with a little bit. Learn one tefillah, learn it well, say it slowly, and you will see how that one prayer will make a big difference. And obviously, if we have the proper kavanah, the whole prayer will make a difference, because B'ezrat Hashem, with the proper kavanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yikabel Tfilatenu B'ratzon, He will B'ezrat Hashem accept our prayers. Thank you.